Hey, what's up? Hey.
Why don't you tell the world who you already are?
We are just a couple of guitar players that like to play guitar, and we love real amps, and we run Tone Factor. And Tone Factor is
What is Tone Factor?
Tone Factor is the name that we found that wasn't taken for something that kind of like generally explains what we do.
Trademark IP, baby.
Yeah.
It's super important.
Yeah. So I think it was like 8th on my list, but either way, we try to make digital platforms sound better. Because we love real amps and real gear, and we're trying to see how far we can push a lot of these platforms. And so Tone Factor is our journey in doing that and creating resources for other players.
Yeah.
Why do you think digital amp emulation is getting so popular right now?
Oh, dude. I mean, to me,
Why?
the reason I picked it up.
I know it's a PhD essay thesis, but throw me like a paragraph.
Try to slim it down a little bit. But to me, it was just because I needed a quiet solution in my little apartment, 5 years ago, and so I picked up something just to like fix that issue where it's like, well, I can't crank 2 amps, with microphones in front of it in my apartment. So it at least kind of like let me practice quietly or demo out something quietly, and thankfully it slowly started getting better.
Yeah, I mean, moving a lot of these like Marshalls and 412s, like those days are few and far between because of the convenience of throwing a little pedal in your backpack. And obviously, digital has only gotten better, the past 5 years especially. And I think it's going to continue to improve and get more accurate. So I think there's a lot of pros and cons, and with the pros of the digital world getting more accurate, it's hard to justify the cost and maintenance of a real amp for a lot of people.
Yeah.
And a lot of context they play, like they can't have stage volume, yada, yada, yada. So, a lot of factors to consider.
Yeah.
A lot of tone factors.
I'm curious, do you guys ever
you beat me
think...
to it. I was about to do it.
Shameless plug. Do you guys ever think that digital will surpass real?
In terms of like sounds?
Like just, I guess, in quality maybe. I don't know. Like however you might measure it.
No, it sounds like the question is, are amps going to ever go away? I don't think so, right? I don't think, no. Amplifiers are never going away. Tubes are never going away.
No.
I'll always own one. Colt's always going to own one, or a lot more than one. But like you said, the convenience for playing out is just hard to beat these days when the sounds do sound so convincing,
Yeah, right.
And the whole like 70-pound difference is really nice too.
It's like watching an NBA game, like at the sports bar. Can I say sports bar?
Yeah, you can.
With huge TVs, chicken wings. You got dual like vantage points on different screens.
Yeah, I'm
it's like
right now.
yeah. Buffalo Wild Wings. It's like it's an amazing immersive sports experience.
Yeah.
But it doesn't really beat just being in the 100 level section of the game. It'll always be better to be there.
Yeah. Wow.
I do this joke with my wife every time we go to a game and she's on her phone. I'm like, hey, don't look at the score on your phone because the ESPN app is ahead of the game that we're watching.
Nice.
And then everybody's like, are you for real? Whoa, that's crazy. And I'm like, yeah, it is crazy.
Huge conspiracy.
That's how TV works.
Yeah.
Okay. Are we going to do...
Yeah, no, okay,
firmware?
So that's Tone Factor. That's awesome. Let's talk about just kind of your work with the ACS1 prior to this maybe, and then kind of how we got to where we are now.
Yeah.
With you guys, coming out with IRs for this new update.
Yeah, so probably like 4 years ago now, it's kind of when I jumped into like, I wonder where the digital guitar world is at currently. My last experience with that was like the first Bean Pod. And so it's been a long time since I'd even dabbled in the digital world. So I was
Rest
like,
in peace.
Yeah. So that was my first kind of experimenting and attempting at making IRs, which people liked a lot, which was cool. Throughout the past few years, I think we've been trying to evolve and grow, and we've done so much A/B testing on how to just like push things further into getting things to sound like a real amp. We've done a few different like releases and versions of IRs, but yeah, we've recently kind of engineered these brand new line of IRs, which we're going to be including in the ACS1, which is why we're here.
Yep.
Which is funny, the timing of you guys hitting us up was like right in the middle of us kind of finalizing this new line of impulse responses. So we've done kind of 2 sets. Like I did one, then we did a tone match version, and then now we have this third version, which we were just super impressed with.
Yeah, we wanted to take another stab at what worked so well for his original, release of IRs that kind of got things off the ground. And so, it's been a thought in the back of my mind, even as we've been doing the tone match thing, which was done, on ACS1 and Iridium and all sorts of platforms like that. And it's a cool process because it includes a lot of the amp and some of its elements and everything, and kind of forcing, the pedal to sound like that amp in, one way or another, which is cool. But I still in the back of my mind was like, that universal IR capture process, it's like, it works on more things than just the one that you're working on. It's a little more flexible. It allows you to spend a little more time on like the intricacies of it, because you're not like, well, I'm just doing this one amp on this one pedal and I've got to crank out so many more, and it kind of makes you nervous for time. So this kind of set free some of the like time restrictions, and it was like, okay, we can spend more time on just imagining, how to make this thing more real, feel more real, what elements need to go into it to actually give it harmonic response, to give it amp saturation, stuff like that.
Yeah, the biggest thing we noticed, even with my first version of IRs, was like, they sound good, but they still weren't 100% like amp-like and accurate. So we were like, how can we find that extra, like, make the air real, make it feel good when you're pushing it with drives, make it like kind of compress and, just react the way a real amp would. And going back to the tone match thing, that method that we were using got it close, but it was so specific and tailored to like we would include specific settings, like run this IR with these settings, and it kind of had to live there. And once you started changing it
just became too mismatched.
It got weirder. It was just more compounded and mismatched and not super accurate. So with this new method, they're not like tone matched to a specific setting. So there's a lot more flexibility to carve your EQ and not have it get like less accurate or weird. The other thing we were able to, you guys know Chris Greeley, I'm sure, maybe mix engineer, incredible audio engineer, but him and Bobby Strand used ACS1s for pre-pro on one of our last records that we did in the Redwoods. Come up here. So they used some of our new tone match IRs, and they were like stoked on it. And we just sent Chris, some of these latest IRs, and we're like, take a listen to this, like throw it in a session. He's always like putting it in a session, trying to mix it, and he was like, to our surprise even, he was like, this is like a 90% improvement over EQ that he can pull out. So a big element that was missing is the harmonic information that you can pull out when you're EQing.
He said it was 90% closer to a real amp than the other stuff was, in terms of what was actually embedded in the IR that it gave him for him to work with in the way that he would normally EQ something and bring out certain elements. It was 90% closer to a real amp, which was like, wow, that's a big jump from 0 to 90. Cool.
It's been complex because it's like IRs are somewhat limited because they're essentially a snapshot and EQ of something. But so our journey has been, how can we give an IR the complex, like real-time feel of an amp with the harmonics, the way they bloom, and then with the EQ. So anyways,
some of it was just kind of on a whim too. It was kind of like, I think these things in my mind make sense, let's try them. And then we did it, and then whenever I strummed the first chord on it with a drive and a boost and heard the like amp like texture and breakup, I was like, I can't believe it worked, kind of thing.
The ultimate test was,
found it.
Our ultimate test was, we're running our real amps attenuated and mic'd up, and then throwing the IR, comparing it with the real mic, and we're like, we're throwing all our other stuff in there, and it's like, obvious, and this is the first one we're like, dang.
It was the first time running that amp head into the DAW, and then just cycling different IR, different speaker types with like my JMI that I love. And so it was just like, all right, let's try that speaker, and all of them sounded really good, and you just got to quickly actually hear the differences in the speakers and the way they break up and the way that their tonality is. It was like, wow, this is so cool. Like how else could you actually get this experience?
Yeah. So anyway, that's kind of a nutshell on our journey, which is, I mean, countless hours we've spent on this stuff, just because every part of the signal chain matters. The room matters. Like it's such a niche and like a black hole, and we've lost a lot of time, but a lot of it's been like troubleshooting and trying to figure out how to make a more true IR, so to speak. But so we're incredibly stoked on this new line.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons that we came to you guys, is because we know that we know enough to know that there's just an incredible amount of nuance that goes into this. And like you said, there's like some black magic that goes into it. And I think there's, a lot of people could like make an IR, right? Could generate an IR file, but that's like that's like almost nothing in the process, right? Like the process is all of the tweaking, all of the hours of listening, dialing in different settings, and finding what works the best to capture the best possible IR. And that's where we were like, we gotta look for someone to kind of come in and partner with us on this. And you guys were like an immediate choice, and I'm so stoked awesome. That it worked out. Sweet. Can we zoom out real quick and just, why don't you tell us like what is an IR? Like how would you define it? And then just like quickly, what makes these really great that are going on the ACS1 version 2 update?
So in the most simple terms, I would call an IR. It's like a snapshot in time, and it's like the fingerprint of an EQ curve, but it carries more than EQ too. It can carry compression, feel, harmonic, content. So it's kind of complex, but in simple terms, that's kind of what it is. It's like a fingerprint identity of something, almost like in a snapshot of time, if that makes sense.
Yeah, just like a quick 500 millisecond, really short waveform. That is, or in the case of the ACS1, 200 millisecond, and it's just a little waveform that embodies, the different things that we put in line of the speaker and the microphone, capture, and it sounds like that. So it's a digital way of putting those elements onto like an amp pedal, basically.
Yeah. So with this new line that we're launching, we're in our bundles. We have 9 microphones that we love, kind of a choice of dynamics, condensers, ribbons, and then blends, and some other post-processing versions. But for the ACS1, we were like, we want to include like the staples that a lot of, the things that people would grab in a mic locker first thing. So that's 57. So that's going to be on the A side, and then the B side is a Rory 121 ribbon, which are kind of two modern staples. And what's cool about that, we were toying with the idea: do we want to include like different mics and different positions for everything? But we're like, let's keep it like 57 on the front, 120 on the back. That way you can kind of hear even the difference between switching on a mic and get those two important characteristics. Like in 57, if you want more low end, a little more like silky top, then flip the ribbon.
Yeah, because if you would have just done maybe, let's say, 6 different speakers, it could have been cool, maybe could have given some variety, but then like you as like maybe a first-time user or something, you're not sure like, when I'm changing this, am I hearing a difference in mic? Am I hearing a difference in speaker quality? So it's kind of like training you along the way as well to like actually learn differences and stuff like that.
And then the amps we captured these from, for the deluxe reverb, we have a 1966. It's sitting down or right there. So just like a mint.
I see it.
Yeah. Say hey.
I'm waving.
Hey
guy,
so
how are you?
It's original Jensen in it, which is just a great sounding speaker. So that's what we picked for the deluxe reverb. And then we have our AC30 90s Corgera made in the UK, like one of the best AC30s unless you're buying an old vintage one. And we have the Celestian Blue, because you can't really you have to pair those two. And then for the Marshall, I have a 90s JTM50 Tremolo blues breaker that has the UK-made greenbacks, which are different than the ones made today. They sound a lot better, more lush, more like sweet breakup mid-range. And I'll also note, which was a fun test that we did. So 8 ohm speakers and 16 ohm speakers sound different. So in the 90s, Vox made, the AC30 with 2 greenbacks, but they are 8 ohm speakers. And those sound warmer compared to the 16 ohm speakers that are in this Marshall Blues Breaker, which are similar to what Marshall runs in a 412. So that's why they included 16 ohm speakers. So if you didn't know that 8 ohm, like the same speaker, different ohms, they will sound different.
That's the rabbit hole, man.
Yeah, taking us to class over here.
Dude.
Oh, what else, Professor?
That's awesome.
That's awesome. So so keeping the amps and the speaker setups kind of constant, and then just switching out between 2 different staple microphones, and that's what's going to come on the update. And then with y'all's new pack that you're going to be releasing, you're going to have lots more different flavors to kind of play with and load on
like
and get to sift through.
4 mic positions per microphone, and then a bunch of mic blends. There's 9 mics, like we said, and then some other enhanced versions that we're doing a little other treatment on. So
we call
there's
that
a lot
sauce.
of variation. Yeah.
Yeah, there's like the sauce line and then the
sauce,
extra
like
spicy
the
sauce
Wobblies.
line. Yeah.
Yeah, there you go.
We're actually still trying
nice.
to come up with a name for the new IR.
Yeah,
so
if you
we
got
don't know.
ideas, throw them our way. Sauce could be one of them, but
So
Yeah.
we'll figure that out.
Okay, another thing I thought of. You mentioned 500 milliseconds, 200 milliseconds. There's all these like jargony terms around IRs in general.
Yep.
What's a reason that you may want to actually have a shorter IR than a much longer IR?
A lot of it, you just get room resonance sometimes. I feel like there's, like most people, you're not going to notice the difference between 500 and 200. It's when you start cutting really low where you start noticing it can get really tight and then just weird. So I feel like, honestly, 500 to 200 is a real sweet spot. Even down to 100, a lot of people wouldn't notice anything.
Yeah, because from the IR, you really want that like in your face like sound, right? Like we don't really want like a lot of room sound or a lot of room resonance. Like we want that like really in your face sound so that your pedals can do the work and so that bass sound that you're working from. Yeah. And I wouldn't even say a lot of that is down to like the IR length. It does include the information, but what's more important when it comes to that is just like how you treat your room, which is another rabbit hole that we've gone down with like the perfect balance of like it feeling like you're in the room with it, but not creating, these flutter echoes and reflections and sounding, just blurring.
Because to your point about all that extra noise that can get in there, if you start pushing it with a drive-in boost, kind of bringing it back to that one concept again, keeping that clarity and the saturation and all that, when there's all this noise, it just becomes, just kind of a wall of noise. When you start to push it, you lose that clarity, you lose the definition. So the tighter you get that stuff, you can actually perceive that information. It's inspiring. It gives you all that control, like you're mentioning, where it's like you've got, your reverb pedals. You have full control now over all of those like details.
You're
of,
not
like,
having
the
to
way
like
it reacts,
fight interactions. Yeah.
Exactly.
Cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. Hey guys, thank you so much. So excited to have Tone Factor literally embedded into this 2.0 update. We're so excited for ACS1 users to get their hands on it, to start playing it, and just getting inspired by these new sounds and new IRs that are coming with the update. So
thank
you guys.
Yes.
Yeah.
Anytime. Thanks for
having us.
listening.